What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and where I see things going. Before we get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So starting off with some macro data, we don't really have all too much in all honesty. Monday is going to be more of a technical driven day, so in SoFi's case, that's kind of a good thing. On Tuesday, we have building permits and starts. Last couple of occurrences, both positive and negative. The market hasn't generally cared, even though it is a big important data point. The market hasn't really cared all that much. We do have a couple of Fed speakers as well kicking it off on Tuesday, the more notable one being on Friday, and that is Powell. So again, dependent on what they say, that could really move the market. And of course, SoFi. Wednesday, we have the FOMC minutes. Similar to the last data, like the market generally doesn't care about it lately. 2023, 2024, that was a big deal, but still, I think for face value, that's not really that big of a deal for at least that will impact the market. Jackson Hole, that's going to be at 7 p.m. as well. So potentially something that causes some movement in the market. That's a nice way of putting it, I guess. And then Thursday, in my opinion, I think Thursday is going to be the most volatile day of them all, only because there's a lot of flash data, such as composite manufacturing and services. And if you take that and couple it with Walmart's earnings, this is where you could get a little bit more of a doom and gloom kind of mentality, because last 2 quarters, Walmart, their future guidance has been really poor, and they're very kind of fearful about tariffs and the repercussions it will have on their business and consumers. So you take Walmart's potentially negative future guidance, couple that with some negative data, that might cause some fear. So in my opinion, I think Thursday might be the only potential day that causes some volatility, and shorts most likely will be there to pounce on that one day. But overall, short have been really returning a lot. As I've kind of mentioned time and time again, I do feel over the next little bit, it'll get to and stay 6 to 8% range. So it is sitting at 9.5, so pretty good stuff. On Friday, shorts did return 503,000 shares. So my apologies on not doing some videos. I think I've already explained I went to New York for a couple days, which was pretty epic. Saw New York Stock Exchange, did a NASDAQ tour, it was awesome, but nonetheless. So going into this week, I do feel net shorts will return, but most likely they'll be a little bit active on the Thursday. One thing I do want to share with you though, it's not really going to influence the price this week, but it's just more of a good FYI. So this original post right here goes over how I guess SoFi Invest is fixing some things, but there's still a huge list of errors and just whatever glitches. And Anthony actually commented a very thorough update, but one thing that was kind of stated is level 1 options is going to be between Q3 and Q4. I think we generally knew that, but it is in employee beta mode. So I think that was new information, definitely good. A lot of other things here. In reality, it's going to be that level 1 and crypto. That's what people really care about. There was no real indication of when crypto is coming, unfortunately. Same with their last earnings. I feel like that would be potentially the only real negative, that they didn't give a actual date. But nonetheless, at least Anthony did honestly a kick-ass. I don't really see that many other CEOs responding to just regular individuals about errors. So definitely hats off to Anthony about this. Going into this week though, there isn't any fireside chats, no recent news. There was a couple 144s that was submitted right here on the Friday, and it's just 2 sales, one for 24,000. This one is a run, if I'm saying that right, a run Pinto, and it was for tax purposes. Clearly states that right there. Second individual was Eric, and that was 23,000 in shares and change, similarly for tax purposes. So not really that big of a deal in my opinion. When it comes down to the bulls for the options, there's the consensus for it to be roughly above about $24 to $25 range for this upcoming week. Bears are anticipating for it to be kind of roughly around that $22.50. So based on everything, there's still a little bit more upside. Once I go over the technicals, I'll make a little bit more sense. But nonetheless, from the option standpoint, with SoFi closing at $23.77 on Friday, that does mean that the $23.50 and below strike prices are in the money. So you have 9,000 at the $23.50, 13,000 at $23, 6,000 at $22.50, 14, 3,000, 11,000, and so forth. So you did see some abnormal transactions occurring after hours on Friday, and most likely those are always market makers, both on the secondary market and dark pool. So very odd stuff. So you had 1.6 million, 11.8, 1.6, 7.8, and that actually caused a nice bump up right here. And then even looking on the dark pool, you had 2.3, 1.1, 11.1, 1.6, 1.2 million. So clearly market makers were covering that, but still, if you even add up everything, it doesn't actually add up to all of this. So the open interest, so most likely you might see a little bit of a bump up come Monday. But even looking forward into this upcoming week, you don't really see that many walls. So you have 4,000 at the 22 for this upcoming week, 5,000 at the 23, 7,000 at the 24, 8,000 at the 25. Those are kind of the big walls. So yeah, if SoFi does really want to move higher, essentially it can. And like I mentioned, the only thing that could cause some negative volatility would be Thursday. So most likely from Monday to Wednesday, you could potentially see a nice push higher, in my opinion, but anything can happen, all right? It's the stock market, and that's the fun part of it. But with it at 23.77, trading between this R1 and the pivot, it's been like that for the last good 3 or 4 trading days. So 24.64 is going to be that next strong point to really get above. And if you can see that or getting above that early on, then 26 and then potentially 29 might be in sight. So just in the short term, Monday and Tuesday, just watch for that 24.64. If not, most likely then you will be seeing some level of consolidation. On the actual chart, there hasn't really been all that much in new articles or anything on analyst ratings. There's not been anything for I think like 12 days, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 12 days. So it's been kind of silent from that. And then Elliott wave technicals, I'll give you a quick overview of that. And ultimately, last time it did signal that I was going to get to roughly around that $25 range, and it looks like it's still holding out to be true. So as long as it can stay above that key pivot of roughly like $21-ish, then you can anticipate between that 24.57 and 25.56. On the actual chart itself, though, things are looking pretty good. So it was able to fight and close above, for instance, at ALMA. So it does show that it wants to kind of move higher, still above all the key pivotal moving averages. Stochastic RSI, it is a little bit overdone in reality, somewhat still neutral in nature. So yeah, I do feel that in the short term, first part of the week, you will see a nice continued push higher, most likely touching or even breaking above this R1. So I think big things might be coming, in my opinion. By the end of the week, I feel like it will be kind of fully solidified between this R2 and this R1, in my own opinion. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing with SoFi? One thing that actually I was doing more in the $12 to $13 range was I was selling puts. And so ultimately, in case you don't know what that means, if SoFi was to close that expiry date before or below my strike price, I would get to buy shares at that price. So I think that's always a win-win, and plus you get to keep the premiums. I've actually started to do that a little bit more, even at these prices. So even though things are relatively high with SoFi, I do feel that it's actually holding the support levels like a solid champ. So I did sell $21 and $22 strike prices. And so, yeah, hopefully if it does even dip in the short term, then I'll be the recipient of more shares. Then, yeah, things will be pretty good in my opinion, but what do I know in life? Hopefully everyone had an amazing weekend. Let me know where you see things going, at least in the short term. Do you think it's going to be higher, lower? I know a lot of individuals really want SoFi to go down. Like, I see that a lot in my comments. They're praying for SoFi to go down. And I think the only reason why people actually do want it to go down is because they did sell in anticipation of some level of consolidation, and that consolidation didn't really come. You might have had like a test of like that 22-ish, but that's pretty much it. So let me know your viewpoint. One final thing though, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. I put out day trade opportunities, swing trade every single day. Give you a quick summary of some key things to really watch for intraday as well. So definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. Link in the description below and also comments. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.